Okie dokie, we are going, and here's the intro. We're back. I like this hook. You got a book you want to tell us about? Well, let's talk. There's no other place to do it. Only on Catch the Craze. Catch the Craze. Welcome to Catch the Craze Live. I am your host with the most, Sam the Crazy Man Vera, and I am with...
Why did he freeze?
George, you're frozen.
You're frozen, George.
I am with a corpse. George is frozen. Que pasó, Georgie Morty? So while George figures out why he's frozen, we have a special guest on the show, former field reporter and co-host of the Dark Corner on Catch the Craze podcast, and artist Michele St. Martin.
Hello, peoples. Hi, Sammy. Hi, Georgie.
Hola. Oh, you're back, George.
Yes. He's back.
What happened?
Oh, my God. Miracle.
I'm in a bunker.
What happened? You froze.
Yeah, well, what's going on?
What's going on? So we are live, hopefully, because Facebook just changed their settings. So let's see. We might have to do this again because now Facebook is saying it's going to go live now. This is crazy.
Okay.
So we are live on Facebook. This is Catch the Craze podcast. I am your host, Sam the Crazy Man Vera. We're going to do this once more time, but before we do, I got to do the intro.
Welcome to the Dark Corner on Catch the Craze.
Welcome to Catch the Craze podcast audio mix. I am your host, Sam the Crazy Man Vera, along with
Michele, the Maniac Martin.
How you doing? I'm Michele St. Martin for Catch the Craze, Heart of the Industry. I'm here on June 8th at the Big Apple Comic Con. I'm here at the Penn Plaza Pavilion. I'm here with the great Yancy Butler.
Oh, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody.
Yes. Do you see yourself staying in comics, or do you see yourself branching out anywhere or expanding?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Hi, this is Michele St. Martin with Catch the Craze. We are in the heart of the industry on behalf of me and Sam Vera. I am honored here to have at the Big Apple Comic Con here in the Penn Plaza Pavilion. I have to say that. I'm here with the amazing Doug Jones.
Amazing.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
You so crazy, crazy. Who's the craziest? I so crazy. You so crazy, crazy. Who's the craziest? I so crazy. You so crazy, crazy. Who's the craziest? Now who's the craziest? Now who's the craziest? Now who's the craziest?
All right. So I already introduced myself, and my co-host on the line is
George the Dreamer Medina. Hi, everybody.
and our special guest tonight. In case you didn't hear it, I'm going to hear it again. She is a former co-host, former field reporter, artist, Michele St. Martin. Welcome.
Hi, people. Hi, everybody.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
George. Hi, Sammy.
What's
Hola.
going on, Michele?
Hola. So, Michele, it's been a while.
It's been a minute and a half.
Yes. It's been
2 minutes.
quite some time. Lots of things has happened. I mean, let's see. I disappeared for a decade.
You did, yeah.
And things changed, and then you went to an island, and you were drinking coquitos and all that stuff. So let's go back to you. So what have you been doing these past few years?
Just getting my life back, getting me back. I've been on hiatus for quite a while. But in some form of fashion, I've always been involved in the industry anyway. I've been involved quite a bit with Women in Comics, which is a foundation and an organization founded by my very, very, very good friend and roommate, Regine Sawyer. Been just exhibiting artwork here and there for a little while. Nothing really strenuous or no big undertakings. And yeah, it's like, you get that creative block and you just don't do anything for a while because I don't believe in forcing that. I know you've had some shows on the creative process and, things of that nature, creative blocks, how to get through them, whatever have you. But I think I might be on the comeback trail. I want to come back in whatever capacity. I don't know if it's going to be in an illustrator capacity. It might be writing. I've been gearing more toward writing and more attracted toward that. So we'll see. In the near future, in terms of maybe even becoming a business owner. Even though, the times are very uncertain right now, but it also can be a good time to break in, but I won't talk too much about that right now. And yeah, that's about it. But, like you, Sammy, I want to be on, think about, taking measures to come back.
Yes. So I do want to highlight something you just said, and I somehow it missed me. And George is usually good at that because he's the guy with the empathy, and I'm the guy that's just I'm running. But yes, the world's in chaos right now. I mean, like our world has been flipped upside down. We went, from the pandemic to this crisis to the rioting and the looting.
Yeah.
It's a scary time, which creates even more uncertainty. You think about,
right.
George and I had this discussion where we had all these plans for this year, and then everything got flipped on its head, right? So now it got worse, and now we don't even know what tomorrow brings. So we were talking about it, like, how were you doing? Is your family okay? Is everybody okay?
Yeah, for the most part, some of my family did end up getting the COVID-19, but they're okay.
Right.
They're good. I've been keeping tabs on everybody, and thank God everybody's okay. There have been a couple of deaths in the family, older generation.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do about that? It's not necessarily a virus. They're not virus related at all.
Right.
It's old age, wear and tear,
Okay.
that kind of thing. But, so the family's been hit a little hard in terms of that. But for the most part, thank goodness, everybody seems to be on the up and okay and holding it together like we all are. So
I think sometimes like our creativity, sometimes this becomes our escape when something like that happens. Where like you said,
Right.
for example, your comeback trail could be, just putting some of that stuff on paper and like letting it out that way. It almost becomes therapeutic.
right. That's weird for me. It's usually when things go dark or when things go a little left of center, it kind of interrupts my creative flexibility.
Really.
So I'm training myself now it's like a barrier goes up and then this fear comes up and I'm like, oh my God, I have nothing. I have absolutely nothing. But now I think I'm retraining myself to do the opposite, because I know there's a lot to be released.
Right. And I know that that's something that you struggled with. And I think, the
Big time.
for lack of a better word, like I guess the fear factor, the uncertainty. And we, even when we were co-hosting together back in the days, I know that was something that you were challenged with and you were constantly trying to overcome.
Big time. But I think due to times like this and what I've been through for the past couple of years, I won't get into it too much. It kind of releases your fear factor a bit. And it's like, you know what? it's kind of like I'm trying to keep it PG. It's kind of an effort kind of
Right.
this effort mentality. Like, okay, nothing worse can happen, or nothing, it can't get much worse. Let me just try this.
Right.
Get out there and do it. The
Well-
worst that can happen is, I would get rejected and no.
Right.
Or it's like, but it's like the barrier kind of comes down a little bit when something, I don't want to say traumatic happens, but when events like this happens, like the pandemic, like things that just stop your life, or whatever personal issues you have, it could be a good thing.
Right.
So I'm a lot has changed. Let's put it that way. A lot has changed in terms of my attitude, in terms of taking chances, risks. It's like, you know what? You only have one life. I'm still here. So what's the worst that can happen? The most you could do is try.
Right.
You
So
try your best. I
so-
sound real cornball right now, but
so-
you know.
I want to take a trip back in time for those of us who are watching who don't know who you are, or this is the first time getting to know who we are, first time subscribing. And if you're listening, if you're watching, please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, because this will be available on YouTube on Friday, although we're live now. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's
Okay.
talk about the young you.
Okay.
The young you. What were you into as a child? I know you're a big fan of horror and suspense. So let's go back to the beginning, and before we get to today, let's talk about the little Michelle
Like when I was born, or when,
as a kid.
or a
where
little
were you born?
further.
A little
than that.
further.
Where were you born, Michelle?
Where
I'm
were
just
you?
curious. Where were you born?
Where was I born?
Yeah, are you from New
Where?
York?
Bronx.
The Bronx. Okay.
Bronx, born and raised.
Okay.
Little hospital called Union Hospital. Anymore. Got transferred to Mount Sinai via helicopter. My father told me, because I was a preemie.
Oh wow.
Which was, hence the dramatics. I was like, so yeah, born 8 months, so born in the, but to get back to the question, born and raised in the Bronx, all the way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you go to school for like art? Did you go like an art school or?
I didn't really start going to. I started taking real art classes in junior high school. A beautiful teacher who I don't know if she's with us anymore, by the name of Ms. Isaacson, noticed that I had talent, and she would take me to art galleries, and she had a few Soho. She would invite me and my parents down to, look at the shows and stuff. And then she talked to my parents, and she goes, listen, she has talent. And they're like, yeah, we know. And they were like, I think she should be admitted to the High School of Art and Design. I think she should take the test. I'm going to put in for her to take the test. Do you mind? And they were like, no, not at all. So I took the test, made like a poopy portfolio, some pieces, random pieces and whatever have you, brought it over, took the test, passed it, and I became a student of art and design. After that, I went to Pratt for a little while. In the interims, I went to Art Students League, took classes there. And from then on, it was kind of history. From then on, I went from there to working in a comic book shop.
Wow.
Comics.
Which comics?
St. Mark's.
Oh wow! Didn't they close down?
Yeah,
They did. Like over a year ago.
They were was St. Mark's the one down the steps?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Originally, they were upstairs. They were on 11 St. Mark's Place. You had to go upstairs. Took two parts of the front facade of the buildings there.
Yes.
Old comics and new comics side. Yeah. And I worked there for over a year. And then Forbidden Planet came calling.
Oh, you went there too. Wow.
So my point being is that I've always been involved in the comic book industry, whether it was distribution, retail, buying, I got involved in buying comics. That's where Forbidden Planet came in. I became the assistant head of the new comics department when they were on 821 Broadway, right across from the Strand.
Ah, yes.
Facing the Strand. And the place was a giant health hazard. It was amazing. I love that place. We were family. It was a real family atmosphere. But I got more involved behind the scenes there, buying, get more involved in buying comics, got more involved with getting introduced to actual creators of comics. That's when I really started getting my education in comics,
Nice.
really getting involved in the culture and things like that. Started going to conventions, started working conventions. First conventions I actually worked at was, I think it was one of the Fangoria weekend of ours. Believe it or not, we had a table there, and Mike Luckman, at the time, he asked me, he said, you want to go? I said, yeah, I want to go. Yeah, so I got to meet a lot of people in the industry. I started getting involved with Big Apple Comics a lot. Yeah. And then it just started growing from there. A few years later, like in the early 2000s, MySpace happened.
Yes, I still have an account. I'm still up there. I wonder if MySpace still around. I'm still up there. I don't even know how to access it anymore.
I'm still here. I'm still getting hits.
It's still attached to an email I don't use anymore, which is the old Crazy Comics account. So I don't even know how to access it.
I know. My God. So I MySpace happened. You could put things up for free on there.
Yes.
So I said, well, I have all these pieces that I've done just for me. Nobody else. Some old pieces I did for Forbidden Planet, some poster art, some, things for displays and merchandising or whatever have you. So I said, well, what's the worst that can happen? Let me put some pieces up and see what happens, because I saw some comic book creators had accounts.
Right.
They had their pieces up on there. I'm like, well, I wasn't really worried if I was as good or whatever as I said, let me see what happens. So I did. And one of the Palmiotti brothers got in touch with me.
Peter?
Yes,
yeah. Peter. Yes.
And he said, "I want to meet you. I want to. Let's meet up at Jim Hanley's Universe, which was on 33rd and 5th at the time." And he goes, and this is not a come on or anything. He goes, "I really want to meet. I think you have something, and I want to meet you." And he was on point, and he was he was for real. And he said, well, I want to introduce you to, I'm part of this thing called the Comic Book Artists Guild.
Right.
And he said, want to come? We have our meetings at Mocha, which was on Broadway, not too far from the Puck Building at the time, on the second floor. And I said, sure. So I started meeting creators then. That was 2005.
Right.
And then I started collaborating, and I started really getting involved with the creative part, in terms of illustrating, in terms of inking, in terms of that. I got involved with James Rodriguez, who had Nova Star Studios, and started inking his stuff. And then it just took from there. Then I met you guys, and
so you will go. I want to know about your experience when you were in the comic shop, and some of those things that you took away and you applied to you today. So you did a lot of things when you were in a comic shop. You said that you also did buying and purchasing and all that. So let's talk about that and how you were introduced to that arena.
Well, I loved a certain aspect of comics, which was not being really exposed at that time. When I was working at St. Mark's Comics, Mitch was really, really into, who was the owner of St. Mark's Comics. He was really into underground comics
Right.
of the 70s, all kinds of alternative. He was really heavily into promoting independent
right.
comics and stuff like that. And I loved that. I love that a lot. When you go to a place like Forbidden Planet, which is bigger,
Right.
you know, a little more of a becoming a franchise kind of thing.
Right.
It was at the time. They opened up more than one store. You know, they were more catered to mainstream, but I wanted to expose more of the indie comic book side. You know, I felt like there were a lot of like cool artists that needed to be more exposed, and you know, and it's not that they weren't, but they were like a little more towards the, you know, pushed to the side. You know, you had the big two, Marvel and DC, and
Right.
all that being, of course. And it was also the beginning of manga, like the real manga craze was starting.
Yeah, that was big.
I was like, well, I was getting really into that too. So I said, well, you know, I'm starting to get to know all these people. They're starting to come into the store. They want to see their product on the shelf, you know. And so I started just inquiring, making phone calls, you know, laying down the groundwork, suggesting to the managers and the owner, like, why don't we get this person in? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do, and you know, and they're like, well, yeah, here's the budget. Why don't you just start buying stuff that you think is going to sell?
Oh, cool.
So they gave me that liberty of actually helping out and doing that, you know, because they saw that I had a handle on what was selling, what wasn't, me being on the floor all the time, taking inventory, taking care of the receiving, taking care of, you know, the actual merchandise that was coming in. Like, I knew what sold, I knew what didn't sell, and I knew what sold, and I knew what could sell. You know, so I said, well, yeah, I'd be into this. So.
And this was at Forbidden?
This was at Forbidden, yeah.
Yeah, because funny story about St. Mark's. They were having a midnight sale, and I was working at Saks Fifth Avenue at the time. I ran over there, and I'm going through the crates, the boxes, and I stopped pulling out every issue of Moon Knight that was illustrated by Stephen Platt. It was sealed and bagged, and it was signed, and they were labeled 99 cents. They were signed by Stephen Platt. So I go to ring it up. They ring me up, and the guy's like, wait. Oh, this is a mistake. I said, it's your mistake, my reward. I'm out. I was like,
that's true.
So you hear him saying, I need everybody to go through those boxes.
Yeah. Well, you were in the right, because when that happens, they have to sell it to you at the list price.
Yes.
That's listed.
Yeah, so I still have them sealed box. I never opened them. I was like, because I was a big fan of Stephen Platt.
But that's not like, wow, that wasn't like Mitch. Wow, he let that. Wow, he must have been so angry. I know he was. He must have been fuming.
Yeah, it was awesome.
You looked out.
Yes.
You looked out. So that's how that started. And then, you know, I would go to conventions and see who was, you know, on the tables and whatnot, and what kind of product they had, you know, and bring it into the stores, because this is going to sell, you know, and this is going to do kind of well. And, you know, being that, you know, we would be maybe the only ones that would have whatever it was, where we'd get around, and they'd be like, yo, I heard you had this.
Right.
Wow. You know, and I was like, yeah, but I don't know. I wasn't one to toot my own horn. It's like, yeah, we have it. Come over here. And then I'd, you know. So I was like a Jane of all trades. That's
awesome.
Say.
How long were you there for, Michelle?
I was there for about 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Yeah, about 2 years. And then I went into more of the book business. Always involved in comics, always.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what, even now, you know.
Yeah. Did you ever want to, like, being that you were working at Forbidden Planet, did you ever have an idea of maybe putting your own book in there, or like creating something of your own to put it in there? At that time, you weren't thinking that way.
I still am. I'm not at that time. I wasn't thinking that way, but you know, it's a big task. I knew the work was involved. I never wanted to be part of the let's just say you know what I'm trying to say. I didn't want to be, why don't you work for this? Or why don't you work for that? You know, why don't you work for M? Or why don't you work for Mr. D? And I'm like, nah, I don't want that. I wanted to go that way. I've always been an indie girl. Been into the independent circuit. I think they have more stories to tell there. I think they have, just trying to be diplomatic. I think, I don't know. It just attracted me more.
Yeah, no, there's, I think we talked about this in a previous show. There's more free. There's a freedom that comes with being an independent.
It's hard. It's not easy.
It's not easy. But you do have that freedom to write the story you want to write. Where like when you're talking about like the M and the D, like you have to write a certain type of story, otherwise it won't get printed. Whereas
you're at their mercy, and I'm like, I'm not one to be at anybody's mercy. I've never been that way. You know, I've never been contractually bound. Anybody's vision, you know, I don't know, it never appealed to me. So it's you're good. I'm like, yeah, but that's not what I want. I knew enough people to get in. You know, as far as the talent, I don't know, that could have been cultivated a little more, but I could have gotten in. But I'm like, if I wanted it, I could have done it. But
you know what?
Yeah.
You talked about your art education, and you were talking about how you had to take a test to get into the high school and everything like that, and you passed it. Obviously, you got in, went to Pratt. Who were some of your influences as far as artists go? I mean, you were always into comics. Was it a comic book artist that influenced you, or was it just like fine art that influenced? Like, who influenced your art?
Ironically, I started in high school fashion design, fashion design and fashion illustration. So a big influence on me at the time, and who's still a big influence on me, is Antonio Lopez. Antonio Lopez was one of the premier fashion illustrators of the 70s and 80s, I'll say. He actually went to my high school. He was a graduate of our high school, which was the High School of Industrial Arts. He graduated sometime in the 70s, I think. But he was a heavy influence on a lot of my friends who were also in fashion design at the time. As myself. Patrick Nickel was another one. Is another big 1980. He did the cover of Duran Duran's Rio.
Wow.
Everybody knows of the girl smiling on the cover.
Yeah.
You know? So, a lot of like monotone, kind of like simple graphics, very linear. Kind of drawing kind of stuff. So I would say that it started off with fashion design and fashion illustration.
Yeah, I see that in your art too. I do see that,
a lot of elongated kind of stylized.
Yes.
Which I don't know. Some people that's a bad word. I never did. I always admired Todd McFarlane's work.
Oh, yes.
I did. A lot of people.
No, I do too.
A lot of people were like.
I have his book, The Devil's in the Details.
Yeah. I heard that book is really good, right, Sam?
It's sweet. I'm actually gonna do a segment on it on I Create Stories. But it is sweet. I mean, when you talk about the level of detail, even when he was a novice to becoming a pro, because it takes you step by step through his creative process. It's pretty awesome. No wonder who he is.
I
want to read that. I
was talking to Aníbal. He said that and I know maybe you guys knew this, but that he was a graphic designer prior to getting into comics. So the way he designed the page was from a graphic designer's point of view. That's why his panels were something we had never seen before, because before that, everybody that was drawing it was just strictly this is how comic books are drawn. And he came in and said, nope, we're going to put this here, we're going to put this here. And he made it look completely different than what we had seen before.
Right.
I find that a lot of comic book artists, their influences were not comic book related. It was they were in another form of, the industry, or in terms of maybe graphic design, fashion, architecture, even,
Right, but he was an independent at heart, who secured a job in Marvel it was more like a corporate structure, right? Very
Right.
structured, regimented, and he still went against the grain when he did Spider-Man, and he changed the webbing, and he had Spider-Man coming out of panels, and you had these crazy positions that no
Yeah.
human can do, is contorted, right? And they were so against it, but when the numbers hit, they were like,
Exactly.
"Oh, can you do it
That's what I was
again?"
gonna say.
Because it was
That's what I
something
was gonna
nobody's
say.
ever seen before, and I love that.
But it took
I love
courage.
when
It
people
took
take
courage
chances
on
like
his
that.
part to be able to say, "This is how I'm going to do it," and
Yeah.
because this is what is cool today,
Yeah.
you know, and
And-
that's what the
yeah.
art, that's what the consumer was looking for, something new and fresh.
Yeah.
Right. I liked a lot of the Warren Comics artists. You know, the guys that did Vampirella, Uncle,
Right.
Cousin Eerie, Uncle Creepy.
Of course.
You know, I love Felix Maas. His work was just very linear, very almost like contour drawing related, kind of like what Bill Sienkiewicz.
Uh-huh. Sankovic?
Very Bill
Yeah.
Sienkiewicz-y kind of
Yes.
work before Bill Sienkiewicz.
Right.
I also love. Who else? Richard Corbin. When I forget it.
Look at her
When I
face.
first saw Richard Corbin's work, I fell off my chair. I was like, or my beanie bag, or wherever I was sitting at the time, you know, because and he was also drawing things that I shouldn't really be looking at,
Right.
that kind of thing. But I was exposed to him through Warren Comics and then Heavy Metal, which was
Oh yeah.
Metal Hurlant.
Yeah.
So did you like any of Frank Frazetta stuff?
You.
I'm just saying, when
Yeah,
you said
that's
Richard
another
Corbin, I
That's
thought
another no.
Yeah.
That's definitely that goes without saying. Who hasn't been influenced by him? Who doesn't love him?
yes.
I love Mobius.
Yes.
Mhm.
Mobius is
Robert Garrett, rest in peace. He was a big fan of Morbius too.
yes.
Yeah.
And there's so many others. Bilal, I think that's how you say his name. A lot of heavy metal
Yeah.
artists. Creepa. I don't know if I'm saying their names wrong.
Just a couple.
Bilal. I love Serpieri. I love Libratore, who did Rank Xerox. Because again, these are things that not only were beautifully drawn and the stories were on point, but things that were forbidden.
Right.
And it's like, I'm really underage at this point. I shouldn't be looking at this, but there it is in the magazine, back in my cousin's house. It's right there. I'm looking at this. I was not restricted,
Right.
to look at it. I think I was in a mind frame where it's like, okay, I can take this,
Yeah.
I think I was, because of what I was exposed to back in the 70s and things like that, growing up, it's like, for God's sake, they were taking babies in to see rated R and exploitation films into movie theaters. There was smoking going on. There was God knows what back in Times Square. So it's like,
Times Square
was
it was scary to walk through back in those days.
I know, but it was so much fun.
You had everything from pimps and prostitutes and drug spots and porn shops and strip clubs. It was just crazy.
And a lot of the exposure to that too made up, my creative, mindset.
So was it the art that attracted you to dark film and horror, or what was it that attracted you to it?
I can't pinpoint it exactly. Well, I can pinpoint it back to when I saw my first horror movie.
Which one was it?
To do with it, it was a movie called Mark of the Devil. It was infamous for a certain scene. It was about the witch trials in Europe, and it was paid. It was also starred the man that played the villain in Salem's Lot, Vampire Barlow, I think. Barlow. In Salem's Lot, Reggie Nader, I think his name was. He played the Witchfinder General. Horrifically burnt, horrifically. I mean, the whole movie was horrific. People tortured left and right. It was very exploitation. I think Udo Kier was in Blade and a whole host of exploitation and horror movies throughout his life. He was also in it. A couple Andy Warhol movies as well. He was in it as well. But it was infamous for a certain scene that involved a woman getting her teeth ripped out of her, of her mouth, which was not, and gave out barf bags. I remember
barf bags.
Yeah, they had barf bags with the poster art on the stamped right on the barf bags. I'm 4 years old. I'm going into this family. Times Square.
You should have been with that.
Yes.
Times
Whoa.
Square. Times Square.
Explains it.
We're back in the 70s.
Oh.
Holy shit.
So, they let anybody in. They let newborn babies in. You hear them crying. And so I'm watching this. I'm watching these horrific scenes unfold, and then that scene comes up, and I remember to this day screaming. I mean, like Mariah Carey screaming.
You hit notes.
They take me out of the theater, out of the theater, and they put me in the lobby.
Oh my God.
There was no partition between the lobby and the actual movie theater.
Right.
So you can still see it.
Except for a red curtain.
Right.
I remember a lot of red velvet. Then, my parents get me like a big gulp of like Coke or whatever to calm me down, because give her snow caps, give her whatever, give her sugar. Yes, that's what you need. So, what do? I find myself peeking behind that horrific scene, peeking behind the curtain, still watching the movie with this big gulp.
Wow.
I was hooked.
Wow.
As much as that scene traumatized me and probably gave me nightmares,
Yeah.
I was hooked right then and there.
Wow.
I said, that's it. It's over. I'm a horror head.
What a story. What a story.
I can't. Yeah.
Yeah,
4 years old. That was it.
She leaves the most important part towards the end. Yeah, that's crazy.
I was 4. Dude, I was 7 when I watched Scarface. Yeah.
Well, it's nothing. I mean, I have tons of stories. I have tons of Times Square stories. We will be here all night.
Well, yeah, I think I was 7 when I saw Exorcist.
Yeah.
So
they let me watch it when I was 12 years old.
Yeah, no, it was traumatic. They turned off all the lights in the house. My uncles turned off all the lights in the house. We had a pull-out sofa bed in the living room. Me and my sister were on the bed. One of my uncles were hiding under the bed. The other one had a smoke machine. And they started spraying smoke, and the other boat was shaking the bed underneath. Oh my God, the trauma. We ran upstairs, we were crying, and then I hid in the closet and the doors being banged on. It was I had nightmares.
But you hate horror movies, right?
Yes, that's why that's probably why.
I think that's probably why you hate
horror movies. You love horror movies, Michelle. That's so weird.
Everybody's different, everybody's different, but I think a lot of it has to also do with my family.
Yeah.
Family were always into like alternative culture.
I love horror movies myself. Yeah, and like you said, Michelle, I had an aunt who loved horror movies, and we used to watch them as little kids. So we just got used to it, and we just kind of enjoyed the horror movie.
Yeah.
No bueno.
Also, a lot of it had to do with literature too. My family, my aunt and my uncle, they had a huge library when I was growing up, and they loved paperback fiction. We're talking again, 1970s, beginning in the 1980s.
Right.
And I would just scour their bookshelves looking at all of these amazing books with this amazing artwork on the covers, like everything from The Exorcist to The Entity, Salem's Lot,
Entity was
go on and on.
Yeah.
All this like paperback fiction, that is so precious, right? Amazing stories, and I'm reading this. It's the first time I got exposed to Stephen King, Parker, who I had the pleasure of meeting.
Oh wow!
Once.
So of all the
Forbidden Planet,
all the films that you've seen, which is your favorite horror movie of all time?
The Exorcist.
Is it
the movie that scarred you for life?
Yes. It was rough.
Well, like I said, in terms of family, I have a bit of family involved in the film industry, in terms of special effects. Some who have been trained by the god Dick Smith, who actually did the makeup for The Exorcist.
Oh, wow.
So, who are still in the industry today.
That's awesome.
So I remember, here's a story, very short story, and then we'll get on to the next question. When Dick Smith was, I think, living in Mount Vernon, not too far from where my family lived in the Bronx.
Right.
Maybe a short car distance cab ride. He was retiring, was moving to Florida. So he asked my cousin Richard Alonso, if to come over, because he had to get rid of stuff. If there's anything that he wanted from his studio.
Wow.
And he says, "You want to come over with me?" And I knew at the time, I think it was before he donated the dummy of Linda Blair, when it was, the one that one of the mannequins that turned her head.
Yeah.
I think possession scenes, the actual exorcism scene was donated to the Museum of Broadcasting. He had that hanging over his studio.
Wow.
Studio entrance.
Could you have gotten that?
And no.
That's good. I want that.
Actually, and I regret this, and I shouldn't even say this on the air because I'm going to have a lot of people who want to beat me up. But I turned him down. I said, "No, I'm not going over there." Does he still have that freaking mannequin over? And he's like, "He might." I said, "No, I'm not going. I'm not going." Wow. I was terrified of that makeup. That makeup is one of the most horrific. It's one of the actually, I think it's one of the most horrific makeups in cinematic history.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't look at that. I no.
Which is pretty ironic. That
I know.
You know what I mean? That you're a big horror buff, but you couldn't.
I just couldn't. Now
was it because it seemed so real? Yeah. Was it because you can touch it?
Yeah.
And on the screen you can't touch it. It's.
It was too much. It was too much for me. I was like, no, I'm not going over there. It started laughing, and he was like, "Oh my God, okay."
It's funny,
like,
man.
Really, Michelle? I said, "Yeah, really." Well, you're afraid of Night of the Living Dead, so I could be afraid of actually. I think because it was tangible. It was like, oh my God, I'm staring at this thing, and it still looks lifelike, and I still don't like it. And actually, to this day, that's why I haven't been to the Museum of Broadcasting.
No kidding.
That mannequin is there, and I don't from it actually, but I'm like,
funny.
That's pretty fantastic.
So that's your all-time favorite, Michelle. That movie. What, like, in today's horror movies, which one do you find to be the one that you're like, okay, that's a good one? Like, what is one of some of your favorites, like contemporary?
I'm not like a big fan of gratuitous violence like I have been. I'm more into psychological horror, things that are going to keep you up at night and be like, what the hell did I just watch? I liked Hereditary a lot. I liked, what else did I liked also Midsummer, who was also by the same director. I don't know. It's kind of thin. I kind of like Eli Roth's stuff, but I liked when he did Cabin Fever and first Hostel. Then after a while, it just gets a little like, okay, you're milking it a little, kind of like the Saw franchise or whatever. It's like you're milking it. It's like the first, it's fine, just leave it at that. I understand the money-making machine behind it, and in corporate involvement and all that, and you gotta, But I like things with a great story. I like things, that are gonna really, if it's gonna be horror, let it be horror.
Right.
Let it be horrific. Let it, there's a really big difference between horror and horrific.
What about it?
I got you.
So I go for more the horrific now. It's like, it doesn't even have to be a horror film. It can be something, I can't really think of an example right now, but it doesn't, it could just have something in terms of a good storyline that just like is like, what?
Yeah. No, I got you. No, totally. Totally. I got
but there is being involved with in the book business and meeting a lot of people and reading a few things. It's like there's certain things that just stick in your mind that's like a little better.
Right.
Yeah.
And just something being gratuitous for just gratuity's sake. It's just like, there's a bit of a difference. So
You mentioned that you wanted to get into more of the writing side of creating.
Yeah.
Do you have a genre in mind? Are you thinking horror? Are you thinking more sci-fi? Like what is the type of writing you want to do?
Recently, what I've been very into that I never thought I'd be into, because I'm just starting to get into sci-fi now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just starting to get my feet wet in it, but I really got into Frank Herbert's Dune.
Mm.
Frank Herbert's Dune series. I have read Dune more than once already in a short amount of time. I think I'm up to God Emperor of Dune now. So I'm reading I want to read all 6.
Mm-hmm.
I might even start over because there's so much that you miss.
Right.
What I love about it is the world building aspect of it. How complex the complexities involved.
Mm-hmm.
In this, there's philosophy and religion and even things like science and horticulture and political takeovers, which is given what we're
what's happening
now, and how not to trust your, question everything. Don't just the leaders may not be your leaders. That kind of thing. It's a very relevant. Very relevant series. It's a very relevant book. So I've been getting into that a lot. I've been wanting to get into William Gibson for some reason, which was never an interest of mine in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get into I want to start reading Octavia Butler. I want to get into different things that I have put as a bookseller and as a book buyer, that I have put on plenty of tables, but never had the time to read.
Right.
Like now I'm, so it's really weird, but I don't know. I mean, it will probably be something more dark fiction based.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I don't know if it will be a novel. I still have ideas for comic books.
Yeah.
That I want to, but it's about getting, paying your people and capital for it. I just don't want it to be like a freebie thing. I want to be able to, if I do this, it's like, and if I put it out there, it's like I want to be able to support the people who are going to help support me and my idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I'm thinking right now, but I think it's going to be in more of a writing aspect. If the illustration aspect comes back, then it comes back. Right now, I'm probably as open as the sky at this point.
Yeah.
So that's where I am right now.
So, tell me about your first experience at Comic-Con, being on the other side of the table and not as a spectator. What was that like? How did you get there, and what was that experience like?
It was surreal, very, very surreal. It was because of Peter Palmiotti and James Rodriguez. I have to say, they're the ones that put me out there. Probably kicking and screaming at some point, because I remember I was thinking about this actually. I think the first time I was actually behind the table was at Big Apple Comic-Con years back.
Yeah.
I remember it was really strange because I was, I've been going to the conventions since, I don't know, mid 80s.
Right.
In terms of, a comic book consumer, and whatever have you. Sometimes behind the table. So I had a little bit of experience, but it was more as a merchandiser. It was more, in the retail aspect.
Right.
My first time, I remember I'm with my portfolio. I think I was meeting Peter or James to go behind that table in some aspect. I remember walking into the convention, the Artist Alley. It was Artist Alley. I remember walking in there and all heads turned, like, who's she? but it wasn't like, oh, who's she? It was more like, oh, who's she? Whose emphasis, I don't mean to make a big deal out of it or anything, but emphasis on the she. Because, as you know, it was very male dominated.
Yeah, dominated, yeah.
And
Boys Club.
yeah, you know, and it was like, well, you know, who's this?
We invited her into our playhouse. Our treehouse.
Who is this person thinks she is, you know, coming in, you know. And but I never really let that intimidate me, and that was never really an issue for me, because I was like, well, I'm here.
Right.
You're gonna have to deal with it.
Good for you.
Just like you. And you know, I was invited. I don't know about y'all, but I know you pay for your tables or whatnot, but I'm here. You know, it's like the Bronx kicked in, kind of like, and
Right.
I'm here. This isn't even if it's an issue for you, then it's an issue for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was a little bit, it was intimidating, but you know, after they saw me a few times, you know, then they were like, oh, okay, she's one of us.
Right.
I don't know if that was in a gender aspect or like, oh, she's a newbie or whatever, or maybe it was something that I was projecting on myself.
Like, yeah, 9 times out of 10, we create our own head junk.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. So, but I remember it being kind of intimidating, but then, you know, after a while it got kind of welcoming, and I would actually look forward to coming behind the other side. But it was very surreal. It was like really surreal.
And at the time you were doing inking, right? You were inking a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's poster art, you know, pinups, that kind of thing. A lot of James's work I was doing. I think Ray Felix too. He has a couple of things. And you know, yeah.
Do you still freelance, Michelle? Do you still do inking? Like, if somebody needed like an inker or something, would you still do that?
I would still, yeah. I think it's to the point now where I'm, you know, it's like, yeah, you know what? I think I'm ready again. Yeah, yeah, definitely. If the price is right.
Of course.
Yeah, I'd definitely be into it. I would definitely, no problem.
That's awesome.
You know?
So what do you think about what's happening now? Because everything's on, you know, it's been on lockdown, and businesses and events had to rethink their strategy, and there's a lot of people making attempts at virtual cons. Do you have an opinion on that?
And about virtual cons and things are definitely changing. I know that we have I don't think we have a choice now but to adapt. It's going to have to be like this for the time being until further notice, until we're in the clear. But a lot has changed. So I think just like you, just like everybody else, it's very, very up in the air right now. I haven't been paying attention to numbers or anything, or how successful the virtual cons have been in terms of attendance or anything. I don't know how they're taking off.
Right.
Because like I said, I've been on hiatus because, you know, I've just been on hiatus. And like everybody else. So I don't know. I think maybe it's time to start paying attention to that and seeing. I think it could be an aspect that could be, you know, kind of a welcome thing. If you don't want to go to a con, or if you don't feel comfortable going to a con, is even after this, a virtual con, you know, maybe we can integrate it somehow into the live experience.
Right.
But like, I think like everybody else, it's like, wow, this is anybody's guess. I don't know. This is new to us. This is new to everybody, you know, and, you know, I think people are still feeling it out. I know Wizard World has been doing it, as well as some other platforms. But I don't know how successful it's been. I really don't, in terms of, you know, the actual brick and mortar, real, you know, tangible conventions. So I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see, you know, or pay more attention to it. I think we have had a lot of things, you know, distracting us from that now, you know, because of the media, because of the news. It's like, well, the last thing on my mind is some convention right now. You know, I think a lot of people feel that way. I don't know. We'll just have to we'll just have to see.
I just find it pretty interesting, and then maybe something's changed, but I just looked, I didn't see anything. But everybody else canceled, but New York Comic Con still has not canceled. I put out a press release stating they canceled. I think they're planning on going through, and I
could see that because I mean it is all the way in October, but at the same time, this changes every day.
Yes,
it's changing all the time. So who knows? We didn't think San Diego was going to get canceled, and then all of a sudden they're like, "No, we're canceling this out." It's not time. So I don't know. This is anybody's guess. I hope not. I hope that we are more in the clear and certain closer to that time. I hope we do, because I have to say, from a geek girl perspective, I kind of miss it.
Yeah.
I really do. I don't know. I don't know, because this is something that we're used to. This is something that that we love. Despite the crowds and the messiness and all the headaches that go with it. It's still in our blood. So I don't know. It's like
it's
a virtual
exhausting.
thing.
Yeah, it is exhausting to be behind a table for 8 hours. It's a job, and it's exhausting. But at the end of the day, you're right. You're like, I can't wait to do it again. Can't wait to come back.
It is. It's like an addiction. It's almost like I miss it.
Yeah.
I miss it. I'm not gonna lie. I miss it.
It's funny because I've been doing a lot of, I'm working on the Catch the Craze doc. And so I'm going through a lot of footage, and I ran into George. You're going to get a kick out of this. I ran it, George, Jonathan, and myself, our first San Diego Comic Con.
Nice.
We weren't smart enough to get a hotel by the con. We got a hotel that was like on the other side of the world. And you had to take the train, and then from the train, you had to walk. It was like 1.5 miles to the hotel. And so I got the video of us lugging our luggage, carrying these props, and stopping every 10 minutes to catch our breath in the highway in the middle at night, cars going by. I got such a kick out of, I forgot all about all that stuff. And then I found a video. George, you remember we did a panel at the Big Apple Comic Con?
No, I don't even remember.
We did a panel, and we did like an art raffle. And some people won raffles, and it was you, me, and Anibal on a table with a room full of people. I don't remember it until I saw it on video. Wow. So it's like, as I'm going through the archives, I'm like, if I would have just told George organically, he'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're making it up.
I don't remember. Yeah, you're crazy.
Yeah. And it happens all the time on the show. And this guy's memory's gone.
My memory sucks.
Yeah.
My memory does suck.
So, but I was looking through the footage, and I was like, wow, there's so much history. And, from the Pittsburgh, I found the video of us going to Pittsburgh and traveling and getting lost. And, I got the of Philly when you jump starting the car because, it was a fun time, but it was a grind.
Yeah.
It's a grind. And, we're all older now, and it's going to be even more of a grind, but I still miss it.
I know.
Yeah.
How did you end up being a reporter for the Catch the Craze podcast?
Refresh my memory.
Well, that was at one of my first Comic-Cons I attended.
Wow.
I came by the table, I think. I came by the Catch the Craze table or the Crazy Comics table and said hi to you guys. I don't know who I was introduced to first. I think George, it was you.
It's always George. Yeah. It's always George.
It might have been you, and you brought me over to the table. I met Sammy. I met John, and I think I met Annabelle.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't start then. It was later on when I went with, I don't know, was I with James? I think I was with James. We were at Midtown Comics. We were at Midtown Comics, and I met up with Sammy. Sammy was there. And we're like, hey, what's up? What's going on? Talking and whatnot. And I don't know if it was there or a little afterwards via email or through Facebook or MySpace. No, it was Facebook. It was Facebook. You invited me, Sammy, to be a guest on Catch the Craze.
Right.
And, we had it was a really good interview. really cool interview. I didn't think anything was going to come of it. That was not my intention at all. And, I just wanted to, get some publicity out there and have some fun.
Yeah.
And Sammy was like, I had so much fun talking to you that would you be interested in becoming a field reporter?
Oh, there you go.
I would catch the craze. And I said, what? He said, say what? I said, are you serious? And he goes, yeah, I think you're a really good speaker. You're very engaging. I remember this. I remember. And he's like, I'm really impressed. He's like, would you do it? And I said, yeah, to get experience. I was very green, wet behind the ears, kind of timid, but I'm really thankful for the experience because it made me do things that I never thought I'd do. It made me talk to people that I never thought I'd be able to talk to.
Yeah. I recognize the fear with Neil Adams. So that was the one footage. Yes, that was the one clip that I couldn't find for the life of me, and I just recently found it, and it's now on our YouTube channel. I just uploaded it. But I couldn't find it forever. But I had him in a trailer, but I didn't have the video of the interview that you did with him. So I have two videos. I have the first one when you go up to the table, and he's you asked if you could do an interview. He goes, well, what kind of questions, and he's like, well, go around and ask about me and get some information before you come back, right? So I was like, whoa. So I was like, how's that gonna be? So I was like, I wonder what she's thinking. Then the second video is when you go up to start the interview, and you can see that you had a little apprehensive and little gun shy. But once you got into your groove, you were fine.
Right. You know what it was? And I remember I met him years ago before that. And I used to go over, when I was working at St. Mark's Comics, I actually used to go over to his publishing company, which was Continuity Comics?
Mm-hmm, yes.
His damn comics. So I was like, afterwards, I was like, what the hell was I so whatchamacallit about? I've met him before.
Oh.
Or previously at a Big Apple convention, and I didn't even know who he was. It was hysterical. Sitting in an empty table next to his table, and he was just drawing. I was waiting for somebody, actually. This was you guys, me being in the industry. I think I was working at Forbidden Planet at the time.
Yeah.
But I was just waiting for a friend. And he starts talking to me while he's drawing, just saying hi and whatnot, and talking to me and drawing Batman. And I didn't, at that time, I had a knowledge of who was who, but I didn't know who looked like.
Right.
Yeah.
Couldn't put faces to names.
Mm-hmm.
So he's drawing and whatnot, and we're just talking, shooting the shit as he's drawing. I don't even remember if there was a line for him or whatever, but he was drawing Batman, and because he showed me after, he's like, and he's just talking to me like I'm talking to you right now.
Right.
You guys right now. And I'm like, oh, that's great. I was like, oh my God, Batman, that's amazing. I didn't know Neil Adams. I didn't know. And my friend comes from one of the tables or whatever, he comes to approach me, and he stops dead in his tracks, and he goes, okay, Michelle, let's go. And I'm like, okay, why are you acting so freaking weird? And I said, dude, and we're walking away. As we're walking away, he grabs my arm, and he's like, I said, what's the deal? He goes, do you know who you were just talking to? Like some geek boy, I was like, oh, that was Neil Adams. And I was like, oh, okay, that was Neil. You mean really? That was Neil Adams? And he's, yeah, you were just talking to him like you were talking to anybody. I was like, well, he's a person.
A regular person.
What? And it was from what I remember, it was a really nice conversation. So I was like, so afterwards, after all that ridiculous hoopla that I put myself through, I was like, what the hell was I saying? What? He's all right, because I've heard, what it was also, and I'm trying to keep it as diplomatic as I can. I heard stories and stuff about how intimidating he can be, and whatnot, and he's this big thing, and but really when it comes down to it, he's a human.
It's just a person. Yeah,
That's
it's just a person. Yep. talented person, but just a person. And
At the end of the day, you're right.
I would handle it a lot differently now than I
Yes.
stats. It's just
Yes.
still nice, but
Yeah.
still cordial. But
Right.
a lot has changed. Let's put it.
Absolutely.
A lot has changed. So
Man, that's amazing.
you
You know, one
so-
of the highest views, I think, is one of the ones, the interview that you did with the Witchblade actress. I think that's got
yeah,
Yes.
she was one of the good ones. She was one of the good interviews, one of the better interviews, and I love Doug Jones.
Yancey Butler.
That's
Yancey Butler was the highest rated one, and then then
Wow.
Doug Jones. Yes.
really
Yeah. She,
okay.
And then think about it. It's like I knew that you were struggling with the fear factor and you had a lot of anxiety, right? But
I did.
and I remember I was like, "Can you get those interviews?" And you looked at me, you're like, "Oh snaps!" And then you went out and did it, and you, like a champ. And then I created Dark Corner for you because of your love for horror, and we have a couple of episodes where we had some guests on the Dark Corner, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And I wish it would have continued, but you fell off the radar.
I disappeared.
Life happens.
Yeah, seriously.
No, but life happens.
Look,
I'm not even.
They say it's not true, that they don't exist, but I was just walking down a dark road and I got zapped up into a UFO and they let me come back 10 years later.
Trust me, it happens. It happens.
Yeah.
Anyways, hello. How you
Yes.
doing? But I think that I think you have to be able to, or you have to withstand tearing something down
Yeah.
in order for something new to arise.
Yeah.
In order for something new to start, to begin and evolve. It's all part of the evolutionary process as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
For sure.
Sometimes it has to happen.
Yes.
Sometimes it has to happen and you come out stronger.
Yes.
And who's that?
This is my boy. He woke up. He sits in the room with me when I'm recording.
The baby.
Normally he's quiet in the back, but this time he woke up.
Beauty.
Yes. But
Hello.
so as we're getting close to wrapping up, anything that you want anybody to take away from this? Anything that you plan on working on? If people want to ask you more questions, how can they reach you?
They could reach me through, well, I don't have the addresses right now, but you can reach me through, I know, it's like, so prepared, Michelle. You can through Instagram, just look up Michele St. Martin and I'll pop up. My little face will be right there. And Instagram is one of the best platforms to reach me. Also Facebook, like everybody else. Again, just look up Michele St. Martin. And also Twitter, I'm on Twitter a little bit. Again, look up Michele St. Martin, Michele, capital STMARTIN, and I'll pop right up. It's true, because I've seen it happen.
Sweet. We definitely have to have you back, Michele, once you have some of your stuff out and we can talk a little bit more about, what you're creating, because I definitely want to know more about the stuff that you're going to be putting out. I feel like
I'd love to. I would love to be back. I miss you guys.
Yeah,
Same
totally,
here.
man. Best, right
I'm
back
gonna put
at
it out there. I miss you guys. I miss being with you guys. I miss working with you guys.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Same here. Same here. It was funny because when George and I were putting this back together and we're talking about hitting shows, I said I definitely want to hook up with Michele to do some of the field reporting, and then everything got locked down.
Yeah, I know, and everything just fell through the toilet. You know,
it was crazy.
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. I know, but it ain't over.
No.
No.
I think it's a reset.
ain't
I think it's a
over.
reset. I think as a society, as a human race, I think we need a reset. I think we needed to put on get some pow, get a timeout, and this is a wake up call for us to say, look, what we're doing is not working, and we need to either fix it or the planet's going to fix it for us. So
That's right.
so if we don't learn from this crap, it's over. That's the way that's the way I look at it.
A good friend of mine said you better do it because if you don't, somebody's gonna do it for you.
That's it. That's it.
That you can't really say it simpler than that. And
Exactly.
That's a good. I like that. It's on reset. This is a wake up call.
Yes. Big
This
time.
is a complete wake up call for all involved, and it's like, yeah, do it right, do it well,
Yeah.
and I would love to be able to share my experiences with you guys again.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, looking back, you were the guys that really helped put me on the map. So,
Appreciate that, Michelle.
you guys, you, Anibal, John,
Psycho Sci-Fi.
you were the guys that really, so I'm with you through thick and thin, whatever.
Awesome.
Thanks, Michelle. Hey, listen, we love you. We love you.
I love you too.
Blood in, blood
This is
out.
gonna be a big cry fest. You better stop.
It's blood in, blood out. That's it.
Yeah, you're like family.
Yeah.
You really are. You really are.
So we had it was a great time, and I think a lot of us have grown smarter and wiser for it. And so once the gates are open and we get to play in the sandbox again, we get to show those learnings and those skills again.
Yeah.
And play again.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But
can't wait. I can't wait.
Yes, but thank you, Michelle. For those of you who are watching, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's Catch the Craze with a D-A, not a T-H-E. And this show will be on YouTube this Friday, but you can play it back on Facebook anytime because once we end it, it'll play over and over and over. But thank you again. And again, you can reach Michelle on her Twitter, on her Facebook, on her Instagram. I am Sam the Crazy Man Vera. We're going
George the Dreamer Medina.
The Dreamer Medina.
St. Martin.
There you go.
That
And,
sounded
and here's our credit. It's just easy. It's not.
Crazy. I'm so crazy. You so crazy.
Acquiesce.
Crazy.
No, it's about my friend Acquiesce. I meant
You so
say my name, say my name, right?
This is what you were thinking? Oh,
You are listening
How he described me? He said, "I'm the."
You're listening to Catch the Craze. You're listening to Catch the Craze. You're listening to Catch the Craze. To Catch the Craze. You are listening to Catch the Craze on Catch the Craze. You're listening to Catch the Craze.
Candy girl.